James Cecil Dickens. Anybody ever call you that? My guest is Hall of Fame member, Little Jimmy Dickens. Jimmy, I want to talk to you about life around 1950. What do you remember about that period of time?
Oh, a lot of memories. I spent the first several months on the road. I formed a band in '50 and worked the T.D. Kemp circuit out of Charlotte, which was theaters, Tex Ritter movies and Gene Autry movies, and little small theaters that seat 500 people in small cities throughout North and South Carolina and Virginia and Delaware.
So they would play the movie and then you'd be on.
Yeah,
Is that
4 shows a day.
How many?
4,
Wow. How long was the show?
1 hour, 60 minutes.
Then did they run the newsreel and all of that?
Yeah.
Cartoons?
Yeah.
What did they pay to get in?
25 to 35 cents.
That's it?
Hmm.
Well, that's a lot of entertainment for 25 or 35 cents.
That's back in the 50s, Ralph.
Okay, I
That was a
understand.
lot of money.
I know. I worked at Lowe's Theater. It was a first-run theater downtown, and our premium price was 55 cents at night.
Hmm.
I think daytime you could get in for 35.
Yeah.
Kids for a dime. Jimmy, did you form your first band, or was it, in 1950, or was this your first band in Nashville?
Yeah, Grady Martin put my first band together. It was the old Paul Howard band from Shreveport. Paul had disbanded, and they all came back to Nashville. It was Bob Moore, Jabbo Arrington, Walter Haynes, and Red Taylor. That was 4.
Now, that band underwent a few changes. You discovered, I understand, one of the greatest steel guitar players of all time. Tell me about that.
Well, Walter Haynes played steel for me, and then he went to Korea in the armed forces. And when he came back, he was a little shook up and nervous, and he wanted to get off the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, when you find me a steel man, you can get off the road. So we were playing Detroit for Casey Clark, and Buddy Emmons was Casey's steel player. Walter said, I found you a steel man. I hired Buddy Emmons. Walter took some time off, and
How old was Buddy?
17 or 18, I'm not sure.
Where's Buddy from?
He's from South Bend, Indiana.
Okay. Well, you found a jewel.
Yes.
And you really had a great band. I've listened to the records of that old band with the twin lead guitars, Emmons playing steel.
Yes.
And then a good friend of mine came to work for you, Thumbs Carlisle. I love Thumbs. And Thumbs used to play in my television band.
Well, Floyd Robinson became sick and couldn't work the road anymore with Jabbo playing twins. And I was in St. Louis, and Bob Hastings had a band there in St. Louis. And I told him I was looking for a guitar man. And he said, will you come with me to the club tonight, and I'll audition this guy for you, and or you can audition him. And I went to the club, and Thumbs came in, and I said, I'm going to go on stage and sing a couple of songs, and you play for me. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, sleep at the foot of the bed. He said, you want one part or two? And I thought, what is this man talking about? And he put that guitar on and turned it upside down, or turned it up flat like you would a dobro,
Mm-hmm.
and started playing with all his fingers on the top and his thumbs, and it knocked me out.
He
It
could
just
play.
absolutely knocked me out. And he played it exactly like the record.
He was waiting for you, Jimmy.
I think so.
Later, I met Thumbs when he was playing with Roger Miller.
Oh, my.
And Thumbs used to tickle me. I've always had this theory sometimes that musicians talk through their instruments. And he talked in little short bursts, and he played that way a lot of times. And I had a lot of fun with him. I miss him. What Thumbs told me one time that Merle Travis came to see him and just tickled him to death, and came up to see him after the performance, came up and said, introduced himself. Merle said to Thumbs, he said, "Do you mind if I make a comment about your playing?" Thumbs said, "Well, no, go ahead." He said, "You're holding the guitar wrong."
Thumbs told me once that he was out of work in California and he called Glenn Campbell. And he said to Glenn, he said, "I heard that you needed a fast guitar player." And Glenn said, "How fast are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm faster than you." And Glenn said, "I don't need anybody like that." Recorded my first record, Taking Old Cold Tater and Wait.
Now that was not an old song, was it?
Yes.
Was it?
Civil War song.
Really? That far back?
Yeah.
Was it Hank Williams who because you sang that song, started calling you the Tater?
Yeah. He started calling me Tater, and then first thing I knew, everybody in the business was calling me Tater, and then it just kind of spread to the fans.
Okay, now this is 1949. So you're in Nashville. I assume the Opry has signed you.
Yes, sir.
You got a spot,
Yes.
and you're on Columbia Records. Things are looking up, looking pretty good, aren't they?
Yes, sir. I had the one record out when I went to Europe with the Grand Ole Opry show in '49.
Who was on that show?
Red Foley and his group, Acuff and his group, Minnie Pearl, Rod Brassfield,
Hank Williams?
Hank Williams, and me. Yeah.
I've seen pictures, I guess, taken by the plane. Where'd you work?
All over Germany.
American military bases?
Yes, sir.
Brought them a little piece of home, and you only had the one hit.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of the junior guy with that group, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Of course, Hank Williams hadn't been around that long either.
No, he had just come in.
In fact, did you beat Hank to the Opry, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Because he came 49, you came 48.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about Hank Williams. What made him great? Why did people like Hank Williams?
I wonder. I don't know. He had something that no one else had on the stage.
What is that something?
Never figured it out. But he had an electrifying something that people loved, and whether it was the way he stood or the way he sang or the songs that he sang, I'll never figure out. I don't know. But he had it.
Were you there the night he debuted on the Opry and
Yes.
took 6 encores on
Yes.
Lovesick Blues?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe that?
No, they just wouldn't let him leave.
Were you on? Excuse me. Were you on that show?
On the opera that night, but I wasn't on the show that he was on.
Okay.
No.
Did you witness that?
Yes.
That impressive?
Oh my! I'd never seen anything like it. Haven't since.
Did he sway with the music?
Did he what?
Did he sway or move his
Nah,
body?
he bent his knees and humped over in the back, and I don't know.
He was pretty skinny too, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was skinny as a rail.
Skinnier than Porter Wagner?
I'd think so.
Okay. Okay. Apparently you and Hank were pretty close.
Yes, sir.
Became good friends.
Yes.
Aren't you on one of the cuts in his new box set? Have you seen that?
No.
That Mercury released recently. They collected everything imaginable that he recorded, plus demos.
I haven't seen that.
You're on one of the songs with him.
Old Country Church?
I'm not sure what it is.
That was taken from the Armed Forces Radio, where he was emceeing the Prince Albert show,
Mm-hmm.
and I was his guest.
Okay.
A surprise to me, he called me out there to sing it with him, the gospel song. Never sang together before in our life, or never rehearsed it. He brought me on to sing the gospel song with him.
Did you ever sing again together?
Yes, one other time in Oklahoma City with Bill Monroe.
What'd you sing?
Bill Monroe was, Bill and I had already worked, and Hank, we were standing in the wings watching Hank perform, and he called us out there to sing with him. And we sang the Old Country Church and I'll Fly Away, and they were still standing when we left.
There's a story I've heard, I don't even know who told me, that Hank would stand backstage and watch you work.
He did.
Apparently, you inspired him. You're out there and you're really working yourself to death, and you're killing the audience, and your band sounds great, and you sound great. that would somehow get the competitive juices flowing, and he'd say, "All right, boys, let's see if we can beat that." Or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that story?
Jerry Rivers told me the story.
Okay.
Yes.
That he wanted to come out there and see if he could get him better than you did.
Yeah. Like he had any worries.
Well, Jimmy, you know, I've watched the old Ganaway films, and you know, you jumped around a lot.
Did a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You were pretty active on stage.
Yes, sir.
And I imagine that you were a tough act to follow,
I don't know about that.
even for Hank Williams. Did you like Hank?
I loved him. Yes.
He easy for you to get along with?
Yeah.
Did you ever write a song together?
Well, he wrote a song for me once on the way to Wichita, Kansas. We were flying with Minnie and Henry, and he were in the back, and he said, "Tater, you need a hit." And I said, "I know that." He said, "Well, I'll just write you one." And Minnie Pearl gave us a piece of paper out of the glove compartment and pen, and he's quoting these words to me, to "Hey, good looking." And I'm writing them down. And then he finished it up in about 20 minutes.
Hey, Good Looking was your song?
And he said, "Record that, Tater, it'll make you a hit." And I said, "I will, next time I'm in the studio." And I saw him about a week later and up at the old broadcasting facility, 7th and Union, in the insurance building.
The WSM?
Yeah, we're on the Friday Night Frolic.
Okay.
And he said, "Tater, I recorded your song today."
What did you say?
Thanks a lot.
You know, that was, in my radio career, that was the first big country hit that I encountered. That summer of '51, I got into broadcasting. That was the record that summer, I remember. Have you ever cut it?
No.
Did you feel that he let you down?
Oh, no. No, it was too good a song for me in the first place.
No, but you see, I could see it being kind of a whimsical song. I could see how it would fit your style.
Yes, it would. It would have done that.
Some people would have been mad as hell about that. But Hey Good Looking was written for Jimmy Dickens.
Yes, sir.
And it became one of his biggest hits.
That sure did.
I think you got a great attitude, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Some people would carry that to their grave. You're from, what, is it Bolt?
Bolt, West Virginia.
Town of how many people?
I imagine it's up to about 400 now.
Jimmy, are you one of a bunch?
12 of us.
Wow. Where do you fit in the 12?
I'm the oldest.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You, are your brothers and sisters short?
Well, they're not tall, but they're not as short as I am.
Are you the runt?
I suppose.
Your mother and father, were they tall or short?
Mother was kind of short, but my daddy was tall.
This doesn't seem to have slowed you down at all. Did the kids make fun of you in school for being short?
No, not at all. I've always kind of took advantage of the fact that I was small. My acting on the stage is built around my size. And
haven't you always gotten an extra large guitar?
Yeah, yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I just play a bigger guitar. I played a Super 400 for years, and that's the biggest one made.
And you did it on purpose.
And then I played the J200, which is the biggest Gibson flat top they make.
But you used it because you're short.
Yes.
Well, I interviewed you one time, and you told me you were 4'11", 128 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me that in 1983. What are you today?
I'm about 4'10" and a half now, I think. And I don't know what my weight is. I don't.
Well, hey, I know Brenda Lee told me one time, she said, you know, I used to be 4'9", now I'm 4'8". I think I'm shrinking.
I think so.
She said pretty soon I'll be.
I think we all do.
Were the 50s, you're at the Opry, and the Opry is the biggest thing in country music, and you're there with Red Foley and Minnie Pearl and Hank Williams and Hank Snow and all those people. That had to be an exciting time.
Ernest Tubb, and then here comes Ray Price and Webb Pierce and Carl Smith and Farron Young and all these wonderful acts. I had the cream of the crop to work with.
Well, you know, if you notice, we're not mentioning girls here. Were girls really?
There wasn't that many girls
I'm
singers.
going. Were girls really unique in show business? Very few, and I guess Kitty Wells came along
Yes.
with Johnny and Jack.
Hmm.
But there weren't many, were there? Were there any girls on the Opry except for Minnie Pearl when you got there?
Not as entertainers. I mean, there were some girl musicians like Velma Williams and some of the girls that worked with Mr. Acuff's group.
Mm-hmm. But girl stars.
No.
I wonder who, after Kitty Wells, who came next? Would have been Jean Shepherd?
I think so. Yes. Gene Shepard. And
Did the men ever resent women singers?
not to my knowledge. I don't think so. There just wasn't that many of them.
It was really a man's world, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
As many things used to be. I know in broadcasting, you rarely ever saw a woman in broadcasting, not in those days.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I want to ask you about the arthritis. As you know, Billy Joe Spears used to do her impression of Jimmy Dickens at the grocery store. And it featured you as a stiff-necked individual trying to see what's on that top shelf.
I had a terrible time at one time. I had arthritis in my hands, I had it in my knees, I had it in my feet, and in my spine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the neck is still stiff and always will be. But it went away from my hands and my knees and my feet.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
What caused it to go away?
I'll never know.
Your doctors have an opinion about that?
No.
Did it make it difficult to play the guitar?
No. Well, yes, and I had it in my hands, yeah. But it didn't last long in my hands and didn't deform my hands in any way, but it went away.
See, I have it in my hand, my finger. I got it from my mother.
Yes.
I find that pretty remarkable that it went away. This is one I mentioned to Barbara Mandrell the other day, and she had never heard this. But you told me one time about Ferlin Husky making you his dummy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a ventriloquist.
Yeah.
Tell me that story.
Well, we were in the dressing room and talking, and it was a wardrobe for high school, for plays and so forth, in the makeup room. And we found a little Mexican outfit with a hat, the sombrero, and a little vest and all that. And he put that on me. We rehearsed the old Jack Benny routine, see, sigh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we rehearsed it a little bit. He said, let's do it on the stage. So when he went out to work, I stood in the wings with my little Mexican outfit on. He brought me out and pulled up a chair and set me on his knee and put his hand on the back of my jacket like he's turning my head. We did it and tore the house up. We destroyed them.
Did you ever do that again?
No, we never did it.
One time.
Did it to one time.
That's funny. And you were the dummy.
I was the dummy.
I know one night, we might have mentioned this on Nashville Now. I put you on one knee and Shotgun Red on the other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had the two of you there.
Absolutely. That was funny.
The people we've talked about in the 50s, were you social? Everybody go to everybody else's house?
Well, I don't know that everybody went to everybody's house, but the Grand Ole Opry was a meeting place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody looked forward to coming to the old Ryman and on Saturday nights and Friday nights.
What were the rules back then for the Opry? Did you have to work X number of weeks?
Oh, in the 50s
Yeah.
now, you had to be here every Friday and Saturday.
Well, what if you had a weekend engagement?
Well, you didn't have a weekend engagement. That was your weekend engagement. In the 50s, you had to be here on Saturday night, regardless of where you were. On Friday, that was a must. You had to be here if you were going to play the Opry. And we'd be in North or South Carolina, and have to make that trip back and then leave on Sunday morning to go back to North and South Carolina.
No kidding.
Yes, sir.
So none of the promoters then could book anybody on Saturday night.
That's right.
Was it that way with the National Barn Dance and the Wheeling Jamboree, places
Well,
like that?
I don't know about those shows.
Well, I just thought maybe you'd heard.
No.
So the rules are pretty strict. Who was the boss?
The boss?
Mm-hmm.
Jim Denny.
And did Harry Stone, he have input?
Harry Stone was, yes.
And then, Stone ran the radio station. Jim Denny ran the Opry, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And Jack Staff was program director. Did he have input too?
No, I don't think so. He was program director and the producer for the Prince Albert show.
All right, who put the Opry together? Was that Vito?
Vito Pelletieri.
He was a piece of work. I remember
He was
Vito.
a piece of work.
And his wife played the violin, I remember. But Vito, I remember, ran the Opry. Little old Italian fella, I guess. And there were a lot of jokes that went on the Opry among the men. And he used to write funny things on his clipboard, I remember. I want you to tell me about discovering Marty Robbins.
I was with the Grand Ole Opry show in Phoenix, and we were working at the Gardens and that night, and Mr. Stone asked me if I'd mind going by a TV station and doing a little guest thing on a TV show and plug the fact that we were working in the Gardens. And I went, and it was Marty Robbins and Jimmy Farmer.
Steel player.
Yes, just the two of them on a 15-minute television show.
I guess Marty was playing his own rhythm.
Yes.
And so rhythm and steel. What a band.
That's right. And
Well,
I heard him sing, and when we got to California, I told Uncle Art that I thought somebody should listen to him.
Now, who got to California?
The show.
Okay. Who was in that show?
Red Foley, Ernest Tubb, Hank Williams.
Okay. So you get on, the show moves on from Phoenix. You talk to Uncle Art. Then what happened? What'd you tell Uncle Art?
I just told him that I thought someone should come down and listen to him because I was very, very much impressed with his singing. The rest, I don't know. That's far as I went with it. I don't like that word discovered. I just heard him and I was impressed with him.
Yeah, but you brought him to the attention of the right people. And, today he's in the Hall of Fame. He went down in history as one of the greatest to ever
Absolutely.
come here. Did he ever come around and thank you?
Oh, many times.
Marty was very shy, wasn't he?
He was in the beginning.
I interviewed Marty in 1953, courtesy of Acuff Rose, one of my very first interviews, and I had to drag it out of him.
Had to drag it out.
Yeah, and I didn't have any skills in those days. I was just hardly dry behind the ears. I wasn't very good at that, and I just remember him being very shy.
Yeah, and on the Opry, he'd look down at the floor all the time. He'd never look up.
He wouldn't look at the audience.
Never look at the audience.
But then
he got over that.
Yeah, he became like a little banty rooster.
He did, do it for a fact.
And I always thought there was a certain element of Marty, though, that was still shy all the way through his life. Jimmy, he used to come up. He couldn't sleep at night.
No.
He used to come up and sit with me all night and play the piano and sing on the radio when I did that all-night show.
I remember that well.
But in the beginning, he wouldn't let anybody come in there. He didn't want anybody in the studio with us. And then one night, Bob Luman was up there, and I said, Bob, Marty's. See, you remember the Bible tape we had at midnight? We'd take a break. And I went down the hall, and Marty'd be hidden behind a door, and he'd say, psst. He said, get rid of anybody that's here, and I'll come in there. So I went back, and I said something to Bob about that, and I didn't want to run Bob off, so I said, well, let me go talk to him. I said, Marty, you mind if Bob Luman stays? No, he's okay. So Bob Luman was the first person I think he didn't want just people in off the street. He played the piano, and he brought that little Martin guitar, Baby Martin, and he'd play that. But one time I asked him, Jimmy, I said, when do you sleep? He said, well, I go bed about 6 in the morning. I said, when do you get up? Oh, about 10. That's not before hours. And so I always wondered how he did that. But you really getting back to you really ran up on a giant. Do you remember what he sang that day when you were down on his show?
No, sir, I don't.
Do you just remember he was good?
I've never heard a voice like that.
Tell me about Raggedy Ann. Where did you get that material?
There's a group of us went to a baseball game in Atlanta, and we had a suite up in the hotel, and after the game, we all had a guitar pull. Everybody passing the guitar around and singing a song. And Red Lane was there. And Red Lane handed me the guitar. No, he was playing guitar. And he reached in his inside coat pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. And he said, "Here's something I wrote for you. You can do it or throw it away. Nobody else. But you, I want you to do this." And he said, "It's a recitation. I'm going to play some chords on the guitar, and I want you to read it." And I started reading it, and the farther I went, the deeper I got into it. And when I finished, I looked up, and there was nobody in the room but me and Red. Everybody else left the next room crying.
It's pretty hard to listen to that and not cry. And you used to do it with a doll on stage.
I do still do it.
Still do it that way?
Yes, sir.
So Red Lane wrote Raggedy Ann.
Yes, sir.
And that's been a showstopper for you for some years. I want to get back to Hank Williams and ask you if Hank or Audrey, his wife, brought the nudie suits to Nashville.
No,
Who brought that here?
I did.
Did you really?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
He made me 2 plain suits.
Western suits.
Yeah,
Okay.
stage suits.
Okay.
And then he said, "I'm going to brighten one up for you." I said, "How you going to brighten it up?" And he said, "With these rhinestones," and he had them in a drawer. And so he mailed me that suit with the other 2, of course. But I when I first got it, I didn't know whether to wear it or not. It was beautiful, and I wore it on the opera stage, and I started
What
trend.
kind of reaction did you get when you wore it
oohs and ahs
from the
from
crowd?
the audience.
How about the other entertainers? They think you were a little flashy?
Well, I don't know. They didn't say anything about it, but the first thing I knew, everybody was wearing nudie suits. And
Well, Nudie lived in California, didn't he?
yes,
Did he make some for cowboy stars? You know?
oh yeah,
So you are the man who brought rhinestones to Nashville.
I did.
Were at first were there just a few rhinestones?
Yes, just a few around the trim on the, and on the shoulders, and then it went from there to the fringes and the boots, the cowboy boots with the rhinestone tops, and the pants down in the tops of the boots, like the Roy Rogers suits. And
Now, what year? Do you have a date when you first wore rhinestones on the Opry?
not right offhand.
What year would you think it would have been?
51 or 2.
Hank Williams have a comment about this?
No.
Did he get into rhinestones?
Yes.
They didn't come around and say, "Well, what do you think about that, Jimmy? I think I might get me some rhinestones."
No. Nobody said anything. The first thing I knew, everybody was wearing them.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Do you still wear nudie suits?
Oh, yeah.
How many of those things do you have?
I don't know right offhand, but over the years, I've given a lot of them to charity and charity auctions. And
I know I put on Porter's jacket once for something, and it was heavy. Those
heavy. Those rhinestones are heavy, you bet, and all that embroidery.
It was heavier than a normal jacket. It was kind of a load to take
Sure.
that, walk around in that
Sure.
thing. And I'm sure it was for you.
Yeah.
May the bird of paradise fly up your nose was an expression of Johnny Carson's.
Yes. Yeah.
And there was a disc jockey. In fact, as he used to work out here at Weno at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of his name.
Merritt.
Neil Merritt.
Neil Merritt.
Took the idea from watching The Tonight Show and wrote that song.
Mm-hmm.
Then did that enable you to go and be on The Tonight Show?
Yes.
And sing it for Carson?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think?
He liked it very much.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. He liked the costumes too that my band and I had on, and I had on the Bird of Paradise suit with the big NBC peacock on the back. He liked that.
That's great. Was the band dressed the same way?
No, they had on nudie suits though.
How did Neil Merritt get the song to you?
Through Hap Wilson.
Was Neil a disc jockey in San Antonio in those days?
El Paso, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and Hap Wilson, I was doing an album, and Hap Wilson came in and asked me to take a break. He had something he wanted me to hear, and he had brought me sleeping at the foot of the bed, incidentally.
Yeah, when you get into your titles, there's some of them pretty funny. How to Catch an African Skeeter Alive.
Mm-hmm.
Truckload of Starving Kangaroos.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one of yours. You ever sing any of these songs?
Do you ever sing them?
Uh-huh.
I used to, when they were current.
Do you like the what we'll call the modern sounds of country music?
The modern sound.
Huh?
The modern sound.
What do you mean?
You said these modern sounds. It's all the same.
Okay. Do you like what you hear?
I like some of the songs. I like the songs, but the music is so much alike. There's no separation.
You find it's difficult to place an identity on people anymore?
Yes, sir.
Whereas it used to be, everybody used to have their own identity.
And they had a particular style of
Yeah.
their own. I mean, before a guy sang, you recognized the music.
When they would play the kickoff,
Sure.
like that steel guitar that Don Helms used to play.
Sure. Yeah. And everybody in this business, the younger people today, have been nothing but nice to little Jimmy Dickens. They all show a lot of respect, and they're friendly, and they're nice, and I appreciate that very much.
They like little Jimmy Dickens.
Well, I hope so.
Got to ask you this: you gonna keep this up? You gonna keep plowing away out there on the road?
No, I'm not. I haven't been on the road in a year.
Really?
A year ago, last November.
Have you discontinued that?
Mm-hmm.
You sing at the Opry.
Yeah.
Now, I know you fish with Bear and Reed.
Yeah, I do that, and I go out occasionally on like a package deal. I'll go out and do 2 or 3 songs and MC it.
Well, you remember those shows we did for Marty Martell? Those were fun.
Yeah, Marty, I'm doing one in Plattsburgh, New York, with you.
It's been moved to the 11th.
Yeah.
You on that show?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're going to be there.
Wow.
Thank you.